What is going on, everybody? I'm Alexander Williamson, and you are watching FISHTORY. We're counting down the top 10 best aquarium plants for any substrate on today's episode. Alrighty, my friends. Now, while there are a ton of plants that are great that are just only floating plants, like red root floaters here, or water lettuce, or all sorts of other kinds like Bulbitis hedulata, this water fern here, or even anubias and other plants like that get absolutely huge if they grow up and out of the aquarium. I want to focus this countdown on plants that are also stem plants or can be anchored. So you can put them in the substrate, or you can float them or raft them, or you can graft them to different materials. Now, all of these are going to be very low maintenance, no CO2, and a very minimal amount of fertilizers. And I'm going to stay away from the super common stuff like hornwort that's well known already. Hopefully, I will be introducing you guys to some still fairly common plants, but some new and interesting plants on this countdown, including some that are really beautiful in your aquarium and can really help you with spawning your fish and or breeding shrimp in your tanks. All right, my friends, coming in at number 10, we have the wonderful Valsenaria. As you can see here, it will grow in even sand or even gravel or substrate where the roots come up and out of the substrate. It's absolutely fine and happy spreading even without that, as long as there is light and a little bit of nutrients. Now, Valsenaria is a great plant. It will live in waters anywhere from about 6.8 pH all the way up to around 8.5 in some cases, and there's actually different types of Valsenaria, from corkscrew to metallic to red to dwarf or giant forms. And it's really neat in that some varieties have adapted to like Lake Tanganyika levels of alkalinity and hardness, while others are more happy with kind of neutral water. It doesn't love acidic water, so a black water tank wouldn't be a great choice. But as I mentioned, and as all the other plants, it does great in almost any substrate you throw at it. Even if it's inert, the roots will hold on and feed from the water column if need be. Alright, now coming in at number 9, we have potomegrton gayii. That is this fine little plant here. It is a really neat plant in that it is thin as a ribbon, kind of similar to Valsenaria, and you can see it's got yellows, it's got kind of a bronze, sometimes down the center. Sometimes it's dark green, sometimes it's red, sometimes it's brown, sometimes it's kind of a copper color. It's a very, very interesting plant in that the water hardness, the pH, and the light will all make a big difference. Now, it has an interesting growth pattern in that it can just float around and grow, or it can grow rooted. So if it's growing rooted in substrate, it can grow up to 1 inch a day. So it is a fast grower if you've got ample light. But if you don't have a whole lot of light, in low light, it grows much denser, and over time, it never gets much taller than about 7 or 8 inches usually, because it breaks off at each of these little node points, and it will break off like this over time, and then this piece will float around your aquarium and later find a spot and try to root itself. And that is how it mostly reproduces in the wild as well. But it's a simple plant that I think is quite elegant and beautiful. One of the most colorful entries on our list is nymphaea stellata, or the dwarf lily in the aquarium hobby, which is a beautiful plant. If you have a mother plant, it will have a bulb, and the bulb allows it to store sugars and starch and carbohydrates and literally live on any substrate, including just sitting on a glass bottom tank. Now, it can survive a while doing that, even with no nutrients, but if you do put nutrients in the tank, meaning fish going to the bathroom, fish food, or a fertilizer, this can really take off, and it will have a beautiful purple or red hue to the undersides of things, and over time, the leaves will then turn to a kind of green or speckled color. And it's absolutely a beautiful plant that is super easy to care for. And here's what it would look like if you just let it float and you had a daughter plant form. The mother plant has the bulb down there in the sand and substrate, and the daughter plants, they go off to the sides and basically grow in every direction, and they're much smaller, so you can see how small this plant can be. But all you want to do for maintenance really is trim up any pieces that get too tattered, because eventually they'll break off and dissolve in the aquarium and or spark algae to grow. But an awesome plant that's absolutely beautiful and super easy to care for. Coming in at number 7, we've got Ludwigia repens, which is a beautiful plant when it comes up and out of the water, but it will grow into thick mats above your aquarium if you let it. It will grow very dense, and the roots will actually grow into a thick mat like this that's great for spawning little fish. The babies can hide in there for security, and all sorts of little tiny microorganisms will also live on the roots, which will feed right from the water column if they don't have substrate. But with substrate, you can really grow beautiful plants, like these ones here in this tank that has highlight and more nutrients and fertilizer. You can get this in super red form or in different greens and purple varieties, and generally it will have kind of a reddish tone or a peach tone to the colors, and will start off a green in low light and get more and more red the more highlight you add. It's a great plant, but it'll grow quick if you've got highlight, so be ready. Alright, next on our list we've got crypt lutea, which is a really interesting little crypt that can grow in very low light, down even underneath all these other plants, and it will come up even out of the porous soil, but if it does have nutrients, it will grow into something more like the crypts you see in here. So while I could recommend a whole bunch of crypts on this list, crypt lutea or crypt lucernes are two of the easiest ones. Axelrodi is another really easy crypt. And even in a very low light tank with no fertilization, and whether you use gravel or whether you use aqua soil, it will grow very well for you. And it will spread via daughter plants that chain out. And then you can take the new plants and put them wherever you like. So, awesome plant from Sri Lanka. Gotta love it. Coming in at number 5 on our list, we've got anachris elodea. Now, this is a plant from North America, found all over the continent, that's absolutely wonderful if you need a plant that doesn't need any sort of fertilizer, can grow in low light. It doesn't need a substrate. It doesn't need hardly any fertilizer. This stuff is tough. And it is actually seen as a water weed across most of the world because it is so invasive. It's also very, very resistant to being killed by any sort of agricultural chemicals or chemicals used to kill invasive plants in ponds. And because of this, it's a great choice for something like a quarantine tank where you may not have substrate. It grows up to 1 inch a day in highlight, and in low light it will grow dense and smaller like this plant here. It's an absolutely great addition to any tank. It can be planted as a stem or it can be floated in a raft. Number 4 on our list is the pennywarts or moneywarts. Now, these are absolutely prolific plants. They will flower in medium to highlight. So if you're trying to get a plant to flower in your aquarium or come up and out of the aquarium, this is one of the easiest ones to grow. Now, it can grow in low light, even non-direct light. See how the plant's growing fine back here? It will grow all the way around in a long vine and grow all over your aquarium. It doesn't need much nutrients at all, and if anything, actually too much light like this will burn the plant. So it's a low light plant. It sucks tons of nitrates out of the aquarium, which is great. And there are all sorts of forms, from the spotted types like pinto that has white on the edges and things, to other kinds like hydrocotyle verticillata that looks like little parasols growing in your aquarium. So it comes in all different sizes and all different shapes. It's a great addition to any aquarium. Counting down the top 3, we've got Naja guadalupensis, which is guppy grass. Now this stuff, if planted in the substrate, will absolutely go wild. You can see it puts out a few feeder roots even if it is planted, but it will put out all sorts of stems and get all scraggly and tangled. It's absolutely wonderful for baby fish. It will create a raft in your aquarium if you let it. And in low light situations that are low nutrient situations, just like the elodea here, the guppy grass here will get much tighter, and in high light but low nutrients, you can actually get some reds and bronzes in it, and it will be a much smaller plant. So it'll grow a lot slower and it'll be a lot smaller. But be careful, because even the tiniest little piece broken off will form its own plant. This one is so easy that it's a little scary, and that is guppy grass. At number 2, we've got versicolare dubiana, aka everybody's favorite Java moss. Now this is just about the hardiest moss in the aquarium hobby. You can see it will grow up and out of the tank easily. I've actually gotten it to take hold even on non-organic surfaces like this old filter pipe, which I use as a spawning mop. You can get it to carpet all sorts of different surfaces, from rocks to wood to plants. And it's different than most mosses in that Java moss doesn't need acidic or high light, high nutrients, high flow situations. Now it does better with high flow and nutrients and some light, but it can be in low light or highlight and it will still grow on rocks. You can actually just take the rock out of the water and super glue the moss onto it, and you can put it on rocks or onto wood, whatever your heart desires. It will take hold, and it can even be in 10% salt water or brackish water, and it survives anywhere from 5.0 acidic pH all the way up to 8.2 or 3 pH, which is pretty hard water compared to most of the other mosses. All right, coming in at number 1, topping our list, is going to be Süßwassertang. Yes, a lot of people call it Subwassertang, but this is a beautiful plant. It looks like seaweed in fresh water. It can grow dark if it's in low light, and it can grow all the way down into the cool temperature ranges of 50 or 60 degrees Fahrenheit, all the way up into, 80 degrees or 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Or you can get it to graft onto different surfaces depending on the nutrient load and your light. CO2 also really helps, but it is just about the perfect nursery for baby shrimp and fish. It'll hang low in the water, and I use it in almost all of my tanks that I use for spawning or breeding. Here it is in a tank that's full of marbles as the substrate, and you can see there is a mama shrimp with her babies in her belly ready and on it. Now, Crystal Castleman, one of the luminaries of our hobby, introduced this plant in 2001, and it was first thought to be some sort of bladderwort plant, but it turns out that it's actually in the fern family, and it's a fern gametophyte, meaning that it's the early stage of the fern, right after the spore germinates, and it will never age. So all you have to do is break up a little piece, something like this size, and it will start a whole new group of the stuff. I use it all throughout the aquarium hobby, and I think it's beautiful and super low maintenance, super easy to keep. All right, you guys, thank you so much for joining me on this countdown. Your like and approval of the channel is worth a lot to me. It is always fun doing videos like this when it's warm inside on a cold day outside. I need to go check on my ponds, but thank you for sticking with me on this countdown. And if you want to learn more about any of these plants, doing a deep dive into their science, their care, or other plants out there, check out some of my other top 10 lists or my species spotlights on some of these plants. Check out my other videos, and I hope you all have a wonderful day. I'll see you next time on FISHTORY.
This video is Silky approved.